Hello, Sim Gamers, and welcome to some bonus content to go alongside the Jewel mission. In this case, we're taking care of what we did to grab that extra 3,000 science we had before. We're doing the mission Looking Inward. Major Comms wants to partner with us for a poetry contest. The grand prize will be a reading of the winner's poetry above a really pretty planet. I think Eve is a very lovely shade of fuchsia, don't you? By the time we get an astronaut into Eve orbit, we should have a winning poem. Try to pick a crew member with a melodious speaking voice. In this case, we're sending our probe. Actually, we're sending the same probe that we built for the Jewel mission a couple of episodes ago, basically to locate the Tylo signal. So I just made sure and update the staging. The rest of the probe configuration is just fine for Eve. In fact, its solar power is going to be plenty large because Eve is closer to Kerbal than Kerbin is. So we won't run into those same solar panel issues that we did before. But here we are wrapping up our circularization burn to get ourselves into orbit around Kerbin. And now we are planning our Kerbin orbital ejection and Eve encounter. In this case, I'm dialing things around just to, because I'm already at a more or less optimal Eve transfer window, and you can look online to find what the Eve transfer windows are. Or you can just leave Kerbin's sphere of influence just a touch and then plan it out. But in this case, we had a good Eve transfer window. I think that might have been by coincidence, if I'm honest. Anyway, all we're doing is getting that burn set up to use the rest of the fuel from the main engine, which we've done, to not only leave Kerbin's sphere of influence, but bring us down to an orbit that brings us close to Eve. Now we're warping out of Kerbin's sphere of influence before we plan our next maneuver. This is where we'll actually be able to plan the closest Eve encounter we can find, taking into consideration all of our current orbital dynamics. Struggling a little bit to find a node that I can edit, but there we got it. Now all I'm doing is I'm tweaking orbital radial in and radial out, prograde and retrograde to minimize my distance from Eve at whatever encounter I want. And as I see like one of my controls reach a minimum distance, then I will swap to the other control. So for instance, if I see retrograde or prograde gets me to a minimum distance, then I'll switch to radial in or radial out, depending on what's needed to get minimum distance. It looks like here we're dialing in at just shy of 100,000 kilometers outside of Eve. Now, we haven't gotten an encounter yet, but the reason is because our orbital plane is off. So as soon as we execute this burn, thank goodness for Kerbal Space Programming letting us execute burns under time acceleration. So we time accelerate this burn. I'm actually watching the actual numbers here in the orbital maneuver screen to make sure that I get that target arrival that I'm looking for. I've slowed down time and just really getting that minimum. Now, once again, our plane is different. Looks like we're hitting the ascending node. Means we're coming from beneath Eve's plane of orbit to above plane of orbit at that spot. And we're going to use some anti-normal or basically downward thrust and a little bit of prograde retrograde as necessary to get ourselves a very, very tight and well-controlled Eve encounter. Continuing to use that principle that the further we are away from a point, the more impact we have on that point with less delta V. So if you can, do your thrusts early to get those kind of things done. And mid-course corrections at ascending nodes and descending nodes are natural places to do that kind of fine-tuning. So we've got ourselves an Eve encounter. Now we're just really taking a look at absolutely fine-tuning it to get the lowest, to get the periapsis that we want for this encounter. And all we really need to do is enter the sphere of influence. If we happen to dip into the atmosphere and get a reading or other things, that's bonus. But for the 3,000 science that we want, all we need is to enter the sphere of influence. But if we're sending a probe out here, let's go ahead and get all of our work done. So we've just time warped to just inside Eve's sphere of influence, transmitting our science, and we're taking again a look again at this periapsis. And I've elected to go ahead and raise the periapsis to 120 kilometers, it looks like. And then potentially try and apply a retrograde burn. However, as we get close here, we need to make sure and transmit all of our science once again that we found in the area. We've gotten Eve's Sphere of Influence mission done. Now that we have sunlight and we're coming out, we find that we have ourselves an ejection trajectory out of Eve. And I'm not sure if we really care all that much. Our probe has done its job. It's gotten us in, gotten our science, finished our mission objectives, so we can actually wrap up here and get ready for the next episode. You know how it works. Click the card in the upper right hand corner to get over to the mission and for Jewel, and we'll see you there. Until then, I'm Sim Gamer, and this has been Kerbal Space Program 2 for Science!